If you haven't heard, for the last 2 years, it has been a race for the presidency like no other. I think it's been one of the most talked about races. It got really personal. Social media played a huge role in it. But now the decision is in, and
Donald Trump is the president-elect of the United States. That was a really big upset. He's the ultimate political outsider, now the president of the United States. And I know, this election was so hotly contested. They say these candidates were two of the most unpopular candidates in U.S. presidential history. So I think no matter what happened, a lot of people were going to wake up not happy this morning.
Yeah. Now, you stayed up to watch the whole thing, right?
Almost, yeah. I finally did go to sleep, but then I kept waking up and checking CNN. I'm literally like in bed on my iPhone. I just couldn't stop watching. Like it was like a train wreck in a way. Like, it's like, I know I need to sleep, but I need to find out what's going to happen here. It was such a surprise. All day yesterday, everybody was saying that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And actually, if you remember yesterday, we told you about this group of students who voted in the election, and they, grade school students, correctly predicted the last 7 presidents of the United States. So, and I wouldn't tell you who they elected.
That's right. You kind of kept us in suspense.
But I think I can tell you now. So 52%, they said that Hillary Clinton would win, just like everyone else. That's what they said, and everyone was wrong. Were you shocked when you woke up this morning? I know, because you went to sleep and slept like a baby, right?
Yeah, you know what? I had an event at the church last night, so I was there, and we kind of followed it a little bit on social media. And then I got home, and it was about 11 o'clock. I was so exhausted. I said, we have to get up early to be here for this, very important program. So I went to bed very early. And I woke up this morning and I hopped on my iPhone like everybody else, and I saw that Donald Trump had won, and I was like, wow, it's going to be an interesting day. So, listen, there's a lot that went on, and we're not like all the experts here, but let's look at a recap to kind of just bring us up to speed on how it all went down.
I love this country.
It is the first few expected. Donald Trump, the first person since Dwight Eisenhower who never held office before the campaign, now the United States president-elect.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division.
Trump thanked his competitor, Democrat Hillary Clinton, who called Trump to concede the race but did not address supporters who had gathered in a glass-ceilinged convention center for what they had hoped would be her victory party. Her campaign advisor spoke briefly instead.
We are so proud of her. She's done an amazing job.
Clinton entered Election Day leading in national polls with what political experts said was a clearer path to the 270 electoral votes needed to win the race. Through the night, that path narrowed until it closed completely. Key states like Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina went to Trump. So did safe states like Wisconsin the Clinton campaign thought were locked up. Clinton had a night of not enoughs, winning 88% of the African-American vote, but not as much as President Obama captured 4 years ago. She also won less of the Latino, white, and young people vote than Obama had. In New York, I'm Emily Schmidt reporting.
Well, what a night that was last night. And we need to pray for the new president of the United States. We also need to pray for Hillary Clinton, who had, incredible goals. And how crushed she is this morning, and her team too. A lot of people quit their jobs to run these campaigns, and they wake up the next morning literally unemployed.
I can't imagine the disappointment. I mean, think of anything you've ever done in your life. You've really tried, and you were sure this is going to happen, it's going to happen, and then it doesn't come to pass. And so there's massive, disappointment for her and for all those who are supporting her. And I just want to encourage you, just as a Christian, as a pastor, let's not get polarized with candidates, and personalities. Let's remember that behind the polls, behind all the propaganda, behind all the craziness that is the media, there are people.
That's right.
People who are born and made in the image of God. And let's make sure that just as Christians, that we don't jump on the bandwagon and slam this person, slam that person. Let us be very careful with what we write. Because you know what? Once you put it in social media, it's out there forever. So we need to be very careful about what we say and how we say it.
Yeah, that's a good word. That's a good word, Pastor Joe.
Hey.
Love it. Well, another person we've been following is now Vice President-elect Mike Pence. He is an incredible man of faith, and he was a really fascinating choice for Trump to run with him. And I've been so impressed by just his faith, his family, his values. And, they're saying he could be one of the most influential vice presidents in history, just because he's the political insider where Trump is the political outsider. So he could be shaping policy and all that. So we need to pray for him too and keep an eye on that. It's going to be a fascinating part of the election campaign.
Yeah, well, last night we ran a special here at the Crossroads Network, and for those who've been following us, you know that Lorna Duick, our CEO, is also the host of Context, and a merger has just taken place recently. And last night we kicked off that relationship with a 2-hour live special. And the team is back in the studio again this morning. Everybody's a little worse for the wear, but we're here.
Faith Voice,
This is talking about the power of social media, and this is a brilliant quote. Billy Graham says, in many ways, that our nation has gone away from God, and that America needs God now more than ever.
Yeah, and it will only get worse if people don't vote. So he was saying, you might not like the options, but no matter what, we need to participate in this electoral process. And I just, when Billy Graham speaks, I don't know about you, but I listen. The guy's amazing.
He's a powerful man of God. And we have a quote. We have something that Ed Schiller said that was so important. And let's hear what he had to say about the church's role in this entire process.
This election, more than any in the last 150 years, really threatens the legitimacy, the continued viability of many of the democratic institutions. And I think organizations, whether they're churches or civil rights organizations or others, now will have to play a very important role to bring renewed confidence of the people into the institutions of our democratic society, because they are really being threatened now in a serious way.
Wow, that is fantastic that you see what the media has broken. You're saying, as a culture observer, you hope the church can fix.
I think the church will play a very important role in this, as will others. But the church is, or churches, because there's more than one, are unique in that they are really the embodiment of the morality of the society.
Oh, I just love that.
That's
Ed
amazing.
Schiller is as a former Toronto Star editor, he's a prolific writer. For someone like him to say, we need the church to be the church. Even the mainstream world is recognizing that government cannot fix the division that is happening within these nations, the racism. We need to be the church. We need to bring healing. We need to talk about peace. We need to work. We have way more impact in our everyday lives, in our communities, than any government can. And we need to realize that. All the people who are in despair this morning, it's the end of the world. It's like, no, actually, this is the time for the church to rise up and say, we have the answer. We can bring the healing. We can make the difference in our nation.
Yeah, I think it's time that we as the church, now we get the opportunity to actually to be the church, that we love people, we love everybody, no matter what side of a political spectrum they're on, whether it's down in the United States or even here in Canada. This is a great opportunity for us as believers to be the body of Christ. One of the final things we want to show you about this whole special we did last night is that Laura was able to put together an amazing panel of theologians to talk about the effects of this election. Let's take a look.
Some closing thoughts now to ask, is a good God in control of this election process? Three thinkers on that. Gord Heath, a professor of Christian history at McMaster Divinity College. At the far end, we've got Jim Cantillon, a broadcaster and mission leader, and Steve Studebaker, who teaches theology and culture at McMaster Divinity. And Gord, let's start with you, because you have studied the history of how faith moved alongside Canadian elections. And let's talk, though, the dangers of a civil religion, the idea of blanketing a country like the USA and saying, in God we trust, we're going to just pray this one through.
Yeah, well, the difficulty with a civil religion is that national identity and Christian identity are fused. And so the difficulty in praying or even thinking clearly in that situation is how do you parse out what's national interest and what's Christian interest or Christian concerns. And so how do you even begin to pray or see God at work in the land when basically to be American is to be Christian and to be Christian is American? How can you even begin to be critical of one's nation when they're fused together? And how can you even begin to discern providence and God's work in your nation when they're simply fused together? And so America has a history of a civil religion, civil in the sense of national identity is fused to religious identity, and that has made it very difficult for Christians in the past to think clearly about Christian identity versus or as opposed to national identity.
Okay, fascinating. Steve Studebaker, you're the theologian here. Theology and culture, is God overseeing the results in this election? Like, does he get that detailed that he's gonna help decide?
Yeah, I think when we think about divine sovereignty and the will of God in terms of this election and the election of either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, I think we might want to think of that in terms of the categories of like a natural disaster such as a tsunami. Are those things considered part of God's will and God's sovereignty? I guess in some sense they are. And so the results
So
of this
we're talking tsunami and natural disaster.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's clearly not the will of God in the sense of, you know, it's God's will for the world to be characterized by the values of the kingdom of love and charity and grace, and sort of the vision that you find in Revelation of the everlasting kingdom of God. That's what God's will is. Neither of these people are going to bring that about, but even in our own lives, we don't bring that about.
Okay, Jim Canelon, this is the fallen world, right?
Yeah.
This is just not the ideal God intended.
I would just like to announce right here that neither Donald Trump nor Hillary Clinton are going to knock God off his throne. I mean, really, you know, the Hubble telescope revealed two weeks ago that we maybe have 10 trillion galaxies in our universe. It's blowing all the scientists away, 10 trillion. How small does that make you feel? One picky little election, I think sometimes we think of ourselves more highly than we ought to think. We make too much of these things, but there's no question in my mind that the Lord is very much aware of what's going on. And I think Christians, and I like what you were saying as an historian, Christians need to understand that there's a much bigger picture here. I say preach, teach, and live Jesus. Be salt and light, regardless of political affiliation, and allow the Lord to work through that critical mass, that magnificent middle of America that is God-fearing.
You know, what great words from that panel. I felt like all three people really brought something different. We had the history, we had about, you know, God's sovereignty, and then we had about, hey, is this really going to derail our God? You know, as we were preparing to talk to you guys today, I was really thinking about the book of Psalms, and it says this, and it's so powerful. In 33:12, it says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." You know, our hope isn't in any of these candidates. It's no one person can bring salvation to the earth. Salvation is found in only one person, and that person is Jesus. And we as the church, we as believers, we have this great opportunity, Cheryl. I don't mean my church or just your church. I think the church in this nation can take this opportunity to point people back towards God. We have been so focused on man and woman for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. Now it's time for us to take our attention and put it back where it needs to be, because God truly is the only hope for this nation. Billy Graham got it right. He's not just the hope for America, he's the hope for Canada. And again, we as the church have been given this great opportunity to shine like never before.
And you know, the thing is, we are called to be a unique voice in culture. We're called to swim against the stream. So when culture is on this path of division, of hate, of vitriol, literally, people taking sides, and I've literally seen people attacked and relationships wrecked over people's opinions about these candidates. And you know what? That is not the heart of God. And I would just give a challenge today that we have to be a different voice, that we have to be a voice of love and reconciliation no matter what is happening in our world, no matter what kind of terrorism there is, no matter what people want to destroy us, no matter what our political opinions are. We have an opportunity to bring healing, to be a different voice, to sound a different sound. And I think today is the day we can all rise up and be the hands and feet of Jesus to this world and say, you know, our trust is in God, not in the leaders of the free world, not in Donald Trump, not in Hillary Clinton. That's you know what? And we're going to bring healing to our nation. I think it can be a day of great hope and a day for the church to do what the church does best, and that is shine. Church, shine, shine, church, shine.